Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another great episode of Multifamily Hangout. We have an amazing guest today. I want to welcome back my co host. He decided to come back after the first episode. So, thank you, Chris, for making it back. You know,
Yeah,
I
thanks for
wasn't too
having me
hard.
back. You grilled me last week, but we had a blast. It was a lot of fun.
I wasn't too hard on you. So, thank you for being back. I want to say hi to everybody that's in the audience. Thank you very much for hanging out with us. And I do want to start by acknowledging our sponsors, our friends that are making this podcast possible. Our friends from Apartment Snapshot, the revolutionary platform, the first gamified performance and employee engagement tool designed explicitly for multifamily professionals, is transforming the way we approach performance and employee engagement in this industry. Uh, Again, welcome to the show, everybody. Chris, take it away, sir.
Absolutely. First off, yeah, thank you so much again for having me back. And I am so excited. After last week having Steve Halsey on live, I get to have one of my personal heroes, great friends, and a mentor to me and so many others. Sherry, thank you for joining us. First off, it brings chills to me. Number one, how many things and how you esteemed your career is of having worked with some of the most respected and named brands in our industry in several different positions. So I want to first hear about that and your history, but also I've seen you pay it forward to others, serve on advocacy, serve on committees. You run the cover of NAA's magazine as I think maybe the person of the year, and then you even served in Washington State as their president. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast. We're so excited to have you, Sherry. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Adrian. It's such a pleasure to be here. Such an honor. And it's so great to be connected with people with hearts of gold like you two that want to give back to the industry as well.
Yeah, and thanks for paying it forward to me and showing me the way over the last, I think over the last 10 years. So I think one of the things I'd love to hear from you is, again, I think you just got back from Capitol Hill. You're constantly traveling. You lead teams. Can you break down kind of like your journey of maybe getting into real estate and then even your multifamily journey? And we'll start there.
Okay, good. So this is nearly 30 years ago, this year, 30 years ago, that I was brought into multifamily completely unintentionally. I moved from the Midwest to Seattle, and it was my very first job as a temp job working at a property management company that had asset classes of multifamily, industrial, commercial, and mortgage, of all things. And that was my first taste to the industry. And I fell in love with it. I loved the variety of it and was able to join Trammell Crow Company in the mid 90s. And that was really just an incredible foundation to build an amazing career over. And I have to say, now things have changed so much where we're really focused on having accredited courses or classes to get people into multifamily. But back then, as many of us have been in the industry for this many years, I just fell into it.
Wow, that's awesome. And you've been at several companies now. I mean, right? Sayers, Graystar, several others before coming to Legacy. And that's so cool. I mean, are there some companies I've left out there? Trammell, one of the most incredible companies out there. But can you share a little more about maybe some of the companies that you've been at?
Sure, absolutely. Well, again, starting my career with Trammell Crow as the foundation, you couldn't ask for a better introduction to build upon. But I think from there, I really followed my mentors and took a leap of faith to join new companies. And every time I took a different position, I gained so much knowledge and experience. So I had the opportunity after Trammell Crow to join Simpson Housing and complete some developments for them, but then also Madrona Ridge Residential, which is now known as Security Property Group. A former mentor, Gail Duke, who was running Trammell Crow for the West Coast, started Madrona Ridge Residential. And so I had the opportunity to join forces and get the management company up and running with her. And then that created an opportunity for me to join Greystar before Greystar acquired Riverstone, when we didn't have much of a presence in the Pacific Northwest at the time. And so throughout all of those experiences, you keep developing your connections and your rapport, and it just opens up new doors at every turn. After a number of years, 5 years with Greystar as a director, I was pursued to join Sarah's Regis Group and lead business development for the Pacific Northwest. And that was an incredible experience to do something that had been part of my roles in the past, but not my main focus. And I learned so much from that opportunity, and which opened another door to join an ownership group, Stellar Holdings, and be on the asset manager side, which I'd always been interested in, that side of the table. And then, my true heart and my passion lies with our operations teams and leading teams and developing our team members. And so, just recently, I had the opportunity to join forces with Legacy Partners, and I'm really thrilled about what we're doing across the West Coast and as well as Texas and Florida.
Sherry, I'd like to stay a little bit on the present, right? On your present role, on your current role. And
Mhm.
I'd like to ask you to share a few things about your current leadership role, and also some great things about your current company, Legacy.
Okay, super. Well, I lead operations for the Pacific Northwest as well as the mountain regions, Wyoming and Colorado. I'm in Denver right now. We have development teams here and our ops teams on the ground, and I have the opportunity to work with our local teams on our existing assets, but we have an incredible portfolio of new developments that are underway across Washington and Denver and Colorado area, as well as California. And so I really love having that variety of new lease ups, development, as well as our existing assets.
Very cool. I think about all the different things you've done. I wanted to also jump over to some of the work you've done with outstanding service, right? As like
Yeah.
WUMFA, and maybe some of the work you've done there. I think you've won a few awards, right? From like the Emerald Award, you've won an
Yes.
Excellence Award for service. You won a Portfolio Manager of the Year, going back a few years. Can you tell us a little bit more, maybe about WUMFA, the weirdest acronym, probably EMFA,
Love it.
Eva, just
Well,
maybe
fabulous.
mess up. But tell us a little bit more about WUMFA, the importance of WUMFA, and maybe
Yeah.
some of the things you've learned from that organization, and things that you're giving back on.
WMFA, as Chris mentioned, is Washington Multifamily Housing Association. And this is our state affiliation in Washington, which rolls up to the National Apartment Association. So every state has its own affiliate. And I highly recommend that you really get involved in your local association. I started on the board in 2014 and worked my way through all of the executive committee levels. So secretary, treasurer, VP, president, past president. And that really gave me an opportunity to grow and learn exponentially if I had not taken a step to really get involved. All of those recognitions are so flattering and humbling. But I think when you put yourself into a position of giving back, those things happen organically, and they're terrific. But that's of course something that is nice to be acknowledged for. But the true reward and the true passion is from the change and effect that you can make, and that your voice can make, and that you have a difference in making, and most importantly, how you can help shape this industry. I started just volunteering for committees, putting myself out there, and the more that you do it, the more comfortable that you get, and the more knowledge that you gain, which opens additional doors for you. If we can talk about the legislative side as well, if you'd like.
Yeah, that's gonna be something that I'd like to cover in my next question. Before I go to the question, I do want to say hi to everybody in the audience. Would like for you to type in a comment box where you're from or where you're watching us from today, and please send your questions out for us to ask Sherry. Right? What questions do you have for Sherry? We're gonna watch the comment box. We're gonna make sure that we're asking her the questions on your behalf. And with this, I'm going to my next question, Sherry. I'd like for you to share with us some things about your efforts around affordable housing and then also advocacy for the industry. It's this is very important work that I think is not very well known by most of the industry, but it's extremely important work. Like, how do we try to advance the interest of our industry? So if you want to touch on those aspects, on the affordable housing aspect and on an advocacy aspect, I think that would be very, very interesting for all of us to hear.
Okay, it's probably been nearly a decade now that I started taking a real interest in looking at what we can do as an industry to improve affordable housing. And when I say affordable housing, I'm not talking just about affordable with a capital A. I'm talking about housing for people at all income levels. And as everyone's aware, we have a major housing crisis. Just in Washington state alone, we need to produce over 1 million apartment homes or units over the next 20 years just to keep up with demand. And it's just all of our states across the country are experiencing the same problems. So I wanted to dive into that and find out how I can get involved, what I can do to help policymakers and developers to increase our housing supply. So I started really getting involved, not only locally as I vice chair of the Partnership for Affordable Housing. It's a state coalition on mainly thwarting rent control, which is a direct correlation to our housing supply and affordability, but also on a national level for the National Apartment Association and joining the Affordable Housing Committee. I wanted to learn more about it, even though I had managed mixed income and affordable components, LIHTC but mostly market rate. So it was really foreign to me, but I wanted to get involved. And I was chairing a subcommittee on our affordable housing committee, and just being part of the solution on what we can do to make change, and which impacts all of us. And then over the years, that changed for me to be invited to be the chair of the Affordable Housing Committee last year as vice chair, and working with folks and cohorts from around the country on challenges, what we can do as a shared message, because a unified voice has so much more power, and educating our legislators on enacting and adopting good policy. It's been really rewarding.
Awesome. I know for me, Sherry, like having you to guide me through this process, right? Because it can be intimidating when you're new to the table. I think about you. I think about someone you introduced me to, which is who is Greg Cerbana, right? You never forget the people who you get introduced to, and Greg is you both bring a lot of energy to the room in different ways, right? And and his work, right? Not only locally but nationally. And I think about like Cindy Clare, who pulled a chair out for me at NAA and got me involved. And so all these people who have you never forget those people. So thank you for being one of those people for so many people. And how do you think about, like, as Adrian mentioned earlier, and you mentioned, like, this can be foreign, and why should I get involved? Why should I spend my time? What is it that you tell people who are maybe new to their careers, or people who don't understand getting involved, like, how important this is? Like you talked about the 1 million homes. and apartments need to be built. How do you express it to them? Like, what are the things that maybe they can bring, people in our audience can bring to the table, whether it's locally or nationally in DC?
Well, that's a good point, Chris. I'm glad that you just mentioned that. One of the reasons why I felt so compelled to get involved is because of my tenure in this industry, 30 years. We have so much to offer. And I really think of it more like a duty to pay it forward, meaning whether that's with younger people coming up in the industry, teammates, peers across different management companies. But it's really important that we use our knowledge and expertise to, to better our industry. I also want to encourage people, if they feel like it's just foreign or they don't know enough about it, that's right when you need to get involved, because unless you do, you're just going to stay in that space of being, not as informed as you could be. So there's ways to do that, and that is to constantly look for materials that are published that you can learn from, but really partnering up with your local experts that are already, in that arena and exposed to that. Inquire how you can get involved, what meetings you can join, what organizations, in addition to your local association, and then just outreach and branch out for your network to gain and learn that specialized knowledge.
Sherry, I want to go back to one of the things that you're very passionate about, affordable housing, right? And I think, if I was to ask, the question, how do we make housing more affordable? A very simple answer would be, we're going to increase the supply, because
Why?
increase the supply, the price, of rent will go down.
Yeah.
But what are
Economic.
what are some specifics, right, that we as an industry could do, or maybe like the legislative could do to help our industry and to help make housing becoming more affordable?
Well, you said it. It's supply, supply, supply. So how do we promote that? One, it's working with our legislators to promote policy which could expedite permitting. There are so many barriers to development on very high costs and timeline to get permitting across the board. But coupled with that is our zoning. We need to really move quickly on zoning reform so that we can build in areas that make sense for folks near transit, that are maybe right now not zoned for multifamily, and really make progress there, in addition to programs that help aid our residents in rental assistance, also public-private partnerships as well. And that all translates to supply and increasing housing across the country.
That's great. I think to your point, like these common sense legislation elements. It was interesting last week at NMHC while you were testifying. I know you had shared, but they mentioned last week that a lot of the things being put forth in many of these states don't take into account what happens to people who aren't in rent control. Or other types of situations. And like you said, we do need to take action. We also make sure that we're building for the long term, right? We're not just trying to do something temporary that affects the whole housing stock. They were sharing about how development is dropping in multiple markets because of these issues. But absolutely great to hear. I want to hear more about that. And I think one of the other key things I'd love to hear, and I think the audience would love to hear some of the insights, maybe some of the initiatives or projects you're currently working on at Legacy Partners, whether it's with your team, with your buildings, maybe some things that you're focused on.
Well, as a company, we're always looking at ways that we can be efficient and create new technology platforms to help our teams across the country. It's really exciting right now working on our new development deals and working with our local teams on what we can do to create a differentiator for other new developments, really thinking about the resident experience and how we can build for folks for their well-being and a level of living that's still going to be affordable for people, but also just at a higher level of finishes. And so that's very exciting for us. And we're also excited about growing our third-party management platform across the Western and Mountain regions as well. And excited about partnering with our existing client base and bringing on new partners as well.
You mentioned the third-party business, Sherry. How many apartment homes totally your company is overseeing, managing at this time?
We have over 50 communities and over 12,000 apartment homes. We've built and developed over 78,000 units across the years. We were founded in 1968, and we have those in excess of 3 billion in assets. So it's a perfect size. We're at the right size where we can really give all of that attention and personal touch to our clients, but have the efficiencies and volume to be providing, top-notch, best-in-class offerings.
There we go. I found the mute button. I think when and as you're thinking about like this, technology, right? Obviously, AI is a hot button topic.
Mm-hmm.
There's innovation, right? As we talk about innovation, you're thinking about operations, you're thinking about things to add. Could you share? I mean, it doesn't always have to be a massive leap forward, right?
Yeah.
It can be little things. And I think you hit on like the livability, the customer experience. I'd love to hear a little bit more from you, maybe some of the things that are exciting to you, or as you talked about, like, maybe, we kind of connected about like maybe the healthier aspects and the shift and some things that maybe you're thinking about.
Well, I'll touch on a couple of things there. You mentioned AI, which we're exploring, of course. Every company has to, because it's definitely something that we're all going to be involved with in the future. But to what degree, right? We want to have efficiencies and we need to leverage technology for operations. But you touched on something about the well-being. And recently I was in DC at a first of its kind summit at the White House Domestic Policy and National Endowment of the Arts hosted across all sectors. And I had the privilege to represent housing. And the focus was healing, bridging, thriving. How can we incorporate art across all sectors for bringing community together? And as housing, we have the opportunity not only to incorporate art into our developments, but also our resident experience. So what I was alluding to earlier was when we look at our developments, we're creating greater green space, greater outdoor opportunities, perhaps areas that our residents can create art or experience art or bring artists in. And when you take it to the next level of beyond development, how can we provide those opportunities on existing assets where we are focused on art and resident engagement and the well-being of it. I know the U.S. Surgeon General had mentioned some stats that were pretty alarming, and the fact that we're so connected with technology now, we don't really know our neighbors like we used to. We're at some point isolated, and there's an epidemic of loneliness that's growing. The health risk of loneliness is increasing your risk of Alzheimer's by 50% or heart disease by 30%. That's pretty staggering. And so, housing, we provide the foundation for people and their homes and their families to be well. And so if we continue to look at ways that we can evolve and create more opportunity to bridge folks together and create the communities, I think that's just another level that us as housing providers really need to focus on.
Before we go into the next question, I do again want to acknowledge those of you in the audience that are joining us today. Thank you for being here today. Please type in your questions for Sherry in the comments. We will be watching the comment boxes and we will ask questions. So with that being said, I'm going to take the first question from the audience. And this one comes from Alex, and I'm hoping I'm not butchering your name, last name Quinones. Any advice for a first-time developer? We've been talking about the supply and demand and all this context for the housing crisis. I think this goes in line with that kind of. And Alex is asking any advice for a first-time developer.
Oh gosh, well, there's so much to that question. First of all, location. Looking at ways that you can build TODs, as transit-oriented developments, or near light rail, near transit, I think helps. And working with your local jurisdiction on any programs that incentives that you can take advantage of, and permitting, expediting permitting. Is there anything more specific to that question? Let me know. Oh, I can't hear you, Adrian.
Of course, you got to press the unmute button first. So, Alex, if you do have additional questions or like more details to your question, please type them up in a comment box, and we'll follow up with Sherry.
Yeah, I've got a follow-up actually that could be helpful. I think right now, big comment right off the hills of NMHC, and then as we head to NAA Advocate in Washington D.C. coming up in a month. The big number is, I think, roughly 42% of all new development is, I think they say, right, in bureaucracy, whether it's national, local, permitting, holdups, extensions, you name it, right? 42%. So that only leaves like 58% for all the labor, cost of materials, everything else. So, and then if you run over a few months, it can be brutal or devastating. And I'm sure you've seen this. So, is there something that you see on the horizon to help with that 42%? Is it mostly local? Is it national? Like, what's kind of your thoughts on that?
I think it's national. I think some areas are struggling worse than others. I think it's, again, comes back to legislation and adopting policy that gives better incentives for developers so that we can encourage more housing and eliminate the barrier to entry. Like Alex being a first-time developer, how does he overcome all of those costs? You're right, Chris, 41% is staggering. And I think it's looking for, again, ways that we can increase public-private partnerships, and working with incentives for whatever program you have locally for a mixed-use component with an affordable component for your tax breaks as well.
I thought that was an amazing question, Chris. Just kind of painting a really good picture where the money goes, right, when you're investing. and I agree, like 42% is kind of borderline ridiculous for it kind of makes someone thinking twice. Hey, do I want to invest to become a developer? Do I want to build something? If I'm gonna work almost like as much for the bureaucracy as we work for ourselves. So I guess that some balance right there. And with that being said, I'm curious, Sherry, are the people in legislative resonating with this? Are they aware of the situation, and what is like their solution to resolve this, or are there any solutions? Are we expecting any improvements on this front?
There's definitely effort to reduce the costs. It's really just mind blowing that the permitting costs and uh, entitlements are just so exponentially so high. So there's efforts to work for reductions for that. But in addition, again, it comes back to educating our policymakers. There's a great information from NAA that's 7 cents. Only 7 cents of every dollar of rent goes back to the ownership because of insurance expenses, maintenance, taxes. So when you look at it on that scale, your margins are just diminished so much that there's got to be more legislation and partnerships to encourage development.
So I think that's huge, and I know obviously we can talk for hours, and I'm sure as we know, politicians tend to, as they mentioned last week, they've been talking about social media for years and haven't taken action. And so there was a lot of discussion around housing and how they talked for years, and sometimes trying to get that bipartisan to come together to take action. So we'll come back to that for sure. I do want to get your take, I think, around leadership and maybe some of the important qualities that you've seen. Obviously, you exert a ton of them. I think humbleness, to say the least. You do a great job of that. But what are some of the most important things that you think a leader needs to learn and needs to exhibit to others?
That's a great question, and I do take a humble approach. I find, for me personally, it's a privilege to be in a leadership role, and I think when you are in a position to influence others, that's the highest calling of leadership, is that you have a responsibility of your team members' growth and development. And really, you make such an impact on their well-being. How you present yourself, how you interact, makes all the difference for the people that you influence. And so for me, that's always top of mind. It's when I wake up in the morning, I wake up with gratitude for the day and for the opportunity to influence others. Anyone in around my sphere or whom I come into contact with, in addition to my team members. And I think when you put yourself in a position where you are thinking, how can I be a support to this person and this person, but very, very personalized for that person. I think that you develop those relationships and you get more buy-in from your team and encourage them to take whatever additional steps that they need to, whether it's furthering their education, getting them out of their comfort zone, exposing them to new things, changing their mindset organically. I think that's where the most powerful leadership comes into play, but also stemming from compassion and that just constant motivation and dependability.
So we had a follow-up on the previous question that was asked by Alex.
Okay.
And he's being more specific. I think he's saying he's referring to finding the right resources for a first-time developer with no experience. Because everyone wants experienced developers. I don't know if this is, in your area of expertise, where you could have some advice for him or not.
Okay. It's not, I'm not exactly sure, Alex, how to answer the question. I can find out better for you. I would just say find some other developers that you can model after. You can research developers, let's say whatever size of a multi-family building that you want to build. Look for other ones that you've admired what they've done. Find out who those developers are and try to make connections with them to glean, what's worked for them, what's not. I think that's a great place to start. And also you can find out the management company of those size buildings or asset class that you're interested in working with, and reach out to the ops team as well and see what works for them and what doesn't. And you can work with your land use folks and the jurisdiction that you want to build in. Go down to City Hall and see who you can talk with there as well, and just start reaching out, and doors will open for you.
I love this part of your answer, Sherry. One of the previous guests on a podcast that I still have told me this in a very short, compressed answer: model the masters.
I love that. I've never heard that, Adrian. Model the masters.
Model the masters. He's a very known internationally sales coach. His name is Jack Daly. Very inspirational person.
Love that.
That kind of stuck with me for the rest of my life, for the time being. Model the masters. Look out for those that have done it already, and try to model them. So I thought that was an amazing answer there.
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
Awesome. I think as you're, tying this forward, of like actions you can take and things you can take, you've witnessed a lot, been a part of a lot of leadership. A lot of people use the word culture, right? In air quotes, we'll use it because so many people use it and say everyone thinks they have the greatest culture. I've never met someone who says we have a horrible culture, except I have spoken to some people who, and I think Adrian just did a poll recently that showed that actually a lot of people don't live up to the culture that they maybe show on their website.
Right.
So I'm curious, you can have the best sticks in your buildings. You have the best looks, the best hardware, the best development. But if you don't have the right people, then you're never going to be going anywhere, because you need people right at the end of the day in this industry. So I want to get your thoughts around the idea of culture, and then maybe some of the actual values and things that you can do, because culture is really just those interactions and things that we're doing. What are those values that you actually think contribute most to the success, especially when we think about multifamily?
Yeah, I love that, Chris, that you're, let's be real and talk about culture. I think culture is a culmination of the characteristics that each team member of that organization truly lives. And every organization has their shtick, as you say, and they want to promote culture. But I think the real evidence of culture comes in multiple forms. And one is retention. So team member retention, the tenure of folks on those teams. And I have to brag about legacy, because we have so many team members that have been 2-3 decades with our organization and beyond, more than any other company I've been with. And for our size, it's outstanding, and why I joined Legacy for our leadership and culture, not being rhetoric and not being just some words that we put on a page. And so what I mean by that is how you show up every day, how you represent yourself and your company, at the level of integrity, character, respect, loyalty. Those are all components of it. But also just how you support your team members, and it doesn't matter what position. Just this morning, I was bragging to folks about it doesn't matter across any department of our organization. Everyone's willing to jump out of their chair to help someone else, and you don't always have that with every organization. And I think that's just and it's a collective choice. And when that collective choice is to do the right thing, be there for your others around you, and with the highest level of integrity and character, that's powerful, and that's character, and that is culture.
I love that. The use of your words there, that's going to be a great share with other people. And I love how you used your words of collective, very foreshadowing, because our guest next week is Mike Brewer, who founded the
Oh, love
Multifamily
Mike.
Collective. So he's going to be a great
Yes,
guest. Yeah,
that's
you
great.
know, Mike.
Symbolic.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'll pass it back to you, Adrian. Sorry.
Oh,
you're on mute. Sorry, you're on mute again.
I do want to stay a little bit on culture, and you explain everything so eloquently. But then I want to ask at the individual level, what makes someone an individual like feeling like they're embracing the culture that's being I guess advertised from the top? What makes them? How can we get our employees, every single team member, to get that buy-in, to buy into what we want for our culture to be? What are some ways to get a buy-in?
Great question. You know what I think right out of the gate is allow them to have a voice, and then listen and let them know that they're heard, that their voice matters, that they can make a difference, and that they will impact the collective group. And that I think in that order, that's what really instills in them a sense of value. And all of us want to feel valued. We want to be recognized, and we want to know that what we're doing makes a difference. And I think when you have an organization from the top down that instills that, reinforces it, promotes it, and encourages it, I just get really excited because that energy is boundless. And people want to stay in an organization, in a team where that is the constant.
I love that. And I think that, there's some things I've learned over the years, and especially even on this, in this session with you, that are sticking with me. I think a lot about learning from others, right? And the things I've gotten to learn from you, gotten to learn from other people on these trips, phone calls, even through reading and through video. But, can you share maybe the importance of a mentor in your life, whether it was in your career, maybe through your career of multifamily, and someone who's still been there, maybe they haven't, but is there one or two people that stand out that you want to maybe call out that, and how they made an impact on you?
Well, I've had a multitude of mentors over the years. I'll give you two examples leading up to now, and then my third one that I'm so excited to be partnered with now. Early on in my career, a first mentor of mine is Gail Dew, because I mentioned earlier she ran the West Coast for Trammell Crow. She really instilled a sense of a level of excellence and expectation. Inspect what you expect. And my first introduction into proper property management. And had the opportunity to learn how to lead teams under her direction and guidance, but also how to start up the management company with Madrona Ridge Residential, which is now Security Property Residential. But and she's since retired, but I would still consider her a mentor. And then later on in my career, I had the opportunity to pursue a designation, my CAPS Certified Apartment Portfolio Supervisor designation through NAA, and my instructor was Alexander Jacque, and she's become a mentor of mine since then. And she's also a former chairwoman of the National Apartment Association, and how to be an outstanding leader as a woman. And also grow and develop your passions outside of your operations and day to day. How to really make an impact and lead others. And then most recently, joining Legacy Partners, Dina O'Brien, who has the most compassion and integrity of leading our organization, along with Guy Hayes, our president, but really, truly, deeply living that truth every day. So she's just really super example. As we face so many adversarial things in our industry, so many unknowns, and through all of it, her leading with compassion and doing the right thing is super inspiring.
Sherry, you had built a outstanding career in property management. You work for some of the biggest names in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
The question that comes to mind is, how do you balance this part of your life with everything else? Because this is not your entire life, right? So family, everything else that's not work, right? And your involvement with advocacy and affordable housing, like you're doing so much for the industry. How do you balance that part, or how do you incorporate that in your life so then the other part of your life is it's still out there and active, and you're enjoying? What's that? How do you find a balance? How do you strike a balance?
Well, that's really a great question. And it's so wild to think 30 years and you go about your career, and then it evolves and morphs and changes. I think it's important to really identify what you are passionate about within your field. And fortunately for me, what I'm passionate about is related to multifamily. A lot of folks might be super passionate about something completely unrelated, and that's great too. But for me, I've been able to bridge it together, and focus on what's important and what's going to, number one, help others, and number two, make a change and help improve our industry. But also, in a way to strike a balance with that is look to eliminate things that in your life that are not meeting that quota or criteria. Are you spending time in your life doing activities or with people that aren't necessarily going to share your same values or give back? Or if you spend time doing something that doesn't fill your soul, try to eliminate that. Sometimes I just told my son the other day, really, really limit your time on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, because if I allow myself, to be on there longer than just a few minutes here and there, I just feel like I've wasted a bunch of time, and I didn't do anything to better myself or the people around me. And it's a very empty feeling. So I made a conscious choice to really try not to go down that rabbit hole. And I was so proud of him. He said, "Mom, I just set a 5-minute timer, and you're cutting into my time, so gotta go." So do what you need to do to eliminate the things in your life that are keeping you from pursuing your passions that are actually rewarding and making a difference in other people's lives.
I love that. I think to your point, like, you can become so enthralled in your work and your business and your travel. Are you bringing it home to the family, right? So thank you for
Right.
that. And I would love to like the story with your son. And it sounds like you're teaching them great things. Can you share a little bit more about maybe some of the things in your personal life that you're open to sharing around volunteering, or some of the things that you're proud of, maybe it's adventures or trips or other things about your kids or your family?
Sure. Well, you mentioned volunteering, and I have to go back to when I was young and younger, and growing up in the Midwest. I think that's where I really learned about the importance of volunteering and giving back. Is growing up. And our mother, I say our mother because I'm a twin, and she would make us deliver Meals on Wheels to older people in our town who couldn't get out and needed to have food for lunch for the day. And so we did that growing up, and I think that just watching my mom volunteer around our community and being the meals, or not only the Meals on Wheels, but the welcome wagon woman for our town, was really built those early instilling that importance for me. So it's to answer your question. There's a lot of activities that our family does. We love anything outdoors, and nature really feeds my soul. So we love to fish, ski. I like to play tennis, but also the boys had a lot of activities, really involved in sports, and constantly going to their games and tournaments, and but that keeps us really, really busy.
Sherry, I want to ask you a question about centralization in multifamily. Short question is this a real thing, or is just a buzzword? And I want to get that 30,000 feet view, right? From an executive like you, looking at the full picture. What does it look like? Is this something that's doable? Is it partially doable, or is just a buzzword because everybody's kind of like talking about, and we got to do a little bit of that too, so we're in line with
Yeah.
everybody?
No, I think it's definitely more than a buzzword. I think there's a balance that you can strike. There's definitely efficiencies in centralizing ops that needs to be looked at, explored, or adopted and implemented. But I think also you need to look at risk versus reward, and you want to make sure in centralization that you're not losing that resident touch and that interaction with your residents. If I've heard of completely centralizing everything off of sites or properties, but then you also eliminate that touch point. And so I think it's a balance of leveraging technology to free up your team to be able to do other important work within your communities, whether that's resident retention, resident um, relations, education, and really elevating your customer service. If that answers.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I think to Adrian's point, like the centralization, there's so many ways to think about it, right? Because we are in the business of hospitality, right?
Right.
And are you going to have that touch point, virtually? You're going to have it. You got to have it at some point, right? Even if you're a
Right.
smaller property or a smaller or operation. I think, obviously the change over the last few years of labor, and you've seen, I'm sure, changes of labor. and labor shortages out there in our industry, whether it's development, whether it's now leasing teams, whether it's maintenance teams, but especially the upkeep of these properties. So how do you think about that? Like, how do we overcome these labor shortages, especially as we think about maintenance and upkeep and getting that information back to your teams, right? To keep these buildings in tip-top shape.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that it's really important for us to start looking outside of the normal labor pool. I mean, tapping into different different industries and different skills to make a bigger draw over to property management and like the trained skills we really need to whether it's electrician, plumbing, drywall. I was just having this conversation yesterday about a maintenance person who might not have as much electrical experience, but nobody can drywall better than he can. And all of these, the trade skills that we need to promote. So looking to tap into people that are outside of the industry and bring them in, and then also giving them opportunities to continue learning while they're on site. I think we've done a pretty good job over the years with, but we have a long way to go still on creating opportunities for our service members and our service team to really elevate as well in their roles.
Sounds like we're going to have Adrian head up a NAA effort nationwide with maybe he'll have to partner with two Atlanta guys. We'll have to have Adrian and Raymond Van Beveren doing some maintenance mania, maintenance energy, right, Adrian?
I love that. Adrian, I just saw you have a very focused service oriented session coming up pretty soon. I think I thought that's fantastic. We need to put a spotlight and focus and a lot more effort and energy into that. So bravo.
Thank you both very much. And Chris, count me in on that. Secondly, yes, for the initiative, I just wanted to make it public for those of you that haven't seen the posts on LinkedIn. The initiative is I'm trying to gather as many facilities leaders as I can from across the country and create a platform, a place where we could talk about challenges, opportunities, and best practices for us as an industry, and how can we get better from a facility standpoint, because there's so much opportunity, and I'll say there's more opportunity now more than ever before for a few reasons. One of the reasons is that we have a shrinking talent pool, so we got to make up for that, and we got to find ways to overcome that challenge. Secondly, because rents are not going up at a pace that they used to like 3 and 4 years ago. So if you can't collect more rent, you're gonna have to look at your expenses, right? Number one controllable expense being maintenance. We as leaders can get together and find what are the best practices and share them with the rest of the world. So thank you for bringing that up. Obviously, you could tell I'm very passionate about it.
Wait, on that, I just had a thought, Adrian. Also, I think it's really important if we start reaching out to junior colleges or local educational centers and letting people know we have these opportunities and that this is a path for people to build a career on.
I would love to see that done at a national level, right? NAA driving that. And also I like to see individual initiatives, right? Because I learned over the years that the best way to see a change, or when you hope for a change, is to become that change. For you to be the driver of that change. So I think each company could dedicate some time and resources, not a whole lot, to drive this attention towards how amazing it is to make a career out of starting as a groundskeeper and like ended up as vice president of facilities for a company that oversees billions of dollars worth of real estate. How many industries could you find such a career path in? And I tell you, there are not too many, right? When you say, how proud are you going to be when you look behind and say, I manage so many billions worth of real estate? Like, that's just very uncommon. And I started from the very bottom, like
Yeah.
entry level, very entry level. So how amazing is that for a career?
That's so true. And WIMFA, our local state association, Sloan Sorbonne was instrumental in partnering with some of our local educational junior colleges, or and bridged their students with our association for different programs. So people can reach out to WIMFA, Sloan at WIMFA, and ask more questions on how they can do it in their states.
That's huge. I think something else that comes up a lot, as we're thinking about these trends, right? Whether it's the labor, whether it's taxes, whether it's rent control, different topics. But what are like some trends that you see developing, and maybe like, some of these challenges that you're thinking about, and then also maybe some opportunities that are coming up maybe for 2024, and if you're even looking into 2025. And I know some things may be confidential, but if there's something you can talk to that you think is that maybe people are or aren't discussing enough.
Well, challenges, again, I think it goes back to supply on how we can increase affordability and supply. So rent levels are obtainable for renters. I think there's a big focus on what we can look at all through 2024 on efficiencies, on streamlining expenses, but also looking for ways to enhance any ancillary income as we get through 2024. Trends, I think a lot of focus is going to be on the resident experience also, and thinking about how we can help their experience, and what we put into our projects, forward thinking, you know, to eliminate their having to even look outside of the community for their social or conveniences and work ability. That's what we're focusing on.
That's a ton. Thank you. Oh, you're on mute again. There you go.
Of course I am.
After 3 years of COVID, we're still saying that.
Of course I am. Cherry, as we're approaching the end of our of this emerging conversation, I do want to ask you, for those that are watching this content, either live or recorded at a later time, and they're young, they're entry level, they're looking up to someone like you, someone that like made it so big, and currently makes such an impact in the industry. What are some pieces of advice for them? They're looking up to you, they want to become you one day.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so great. I would really encourage people to continue striving and making everyday actionable steps towards what you want to learn. Be inquisitive, be curious. Put yourself out there, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you might be very nervous or anxious about doing something. We're all, even though we have all of our different organizations and umbrellas that we operate under, it's one large multifamily housing community that I think is incredibly supportive of one another, regardless of your title, regardless of the company that you're with. And if you feel a little hesitant or that you're not ready to do it, just remember there's an army of people around you that are supporting you and will give you grace to take those steps. And And that's where you're going to see the most growth and the most reward also. And sure, there's going to be a lot of moments where you wish you would have done things differently. I'm having those every day, including within this hour. But that's the beauty is I think we all join together to lift each other up, and then we all elevate. And that's what I love about our industry, and that's what I love about continued growth and development, and that's what I would encourage people to do.
Incredible. Do we have more questions from the audience, Adrian? I'm happy to ask another, but want to make sure.
I don't see a per se question. I know that Shazia, said something. It's more of a statement, right? It's important to look how Europeans invest in this, like bringing new blood in the industry, education, things, and their education system in general. So I think that was that was a good remark right there. That I wanted to just kind of bring it here into the mainstream of this conversation.
Yeah, that's helpful. It's funny you say that because I'm going, and I love, like you said, the training aspect you talked about earlier, Sherry. I'm going to be going up to New York next week to
Great.
Fordham University, which has a whole real estate and technology, platform. And it's really interesting to see schools like Columbia, and I don't know if NMHC or NAA have been advocating, but to get more schools focusing on these programs. So I'm excited to learn more. I'll have to report back to you on the Fordham. Karen Hollinger from KKR will be there. You probably know, Steph Furman will be there next week. They're talking about AI. Brad Hargraves. So a lot of the folks I think will be there. And so I'm excited to see that university stepping up, bringing people in the discussion in open discussions. Also be at the Build Expo in New York next week, which is exciting. But there's so many events happening across the country from local and national. Could you kind of share maybe a couple of the ones that you think are really important to you and that people should be thinking about for this year? Like, are there a couple of events that are you always go to and that people should be there?
Yes, and I'm so you're such a great example, Chris, of really broadening your knowledge base. And I mean, you're an incredible connector. No one does it better. I watch you, and you are always putting yourself out there and finding folks that have either shared interest as you, or if you're interested in a subject, you seek out the people that have expertise in that. You're an incredible example of that. And then also going way out of your way to connect people together. It's like you're an incubator for that. It's terrific.
I appreciate that.
Yes. And so I think, well, definitely for me, advocate every year in March, where we go to DC and on the Capitol Hill and meet with our senators and Congress people for our housing initiatives. That's a really critical meeting. But there are so many opportunities now, and also smaller organizations that are putting on conferences. So I think it would be good for people to identify what it is about their initiatives that they're looking for improving, and then looking for those specialized conferences, whether it's technology or development. And then it can be even more local BizNow events. I know our developers speaking in Bellevue and coming up in the next couple of months. And so whether it's a national conference or local, I just to research and get involved and try to participate as much as you can.
Sure. Thank you so much for being here with us today, for spending the time and the extra time too, right? Going over the top of the hour. Any final thoughts for us, for the audience here?
Oh, thank you for having me, and thank you for creating this platform for people to come together and connect. I think in our industry more than ever, that's really paramount. And so the more that we can promote that and work together on improving our housing, the more effective we'll be. So thank you for allowing me to come in and chat with you.
It's been a real pleasure to have you on. Chris, any final thoughts on our conversation today?
Yeah, I think just a couple words. I'm Adrian and I are here live in Atlanta, Georgia, and we want to welcome you out here. Hopefully, you'll come and visit us soon at some point.
Yeah,
But
would love to.
I think actually this fall you're going to be here, hopefully with NAA as we instill Adam King as the new chairman, right?
For our
So we'll be right here in
AOD.
Buckhead. So you'll have to stop into this building. I think there's a few words that's come to mind with you, which is you're humble, you're kind, you work hard, you play hard, and you pay it forward, and you bring energy to the room. So thank you for that. And then I think lastly, one of the coolest things, I think, this role in this company you're at now probably is just a natural fit, because you are definitely someone who I think about who's building a legacy for us to try and follow in this industry. So no, thank you. It means so much that you joined us today. And I know that people are going to eternally be thankful for this.
It's such an honor. Thank you. I really appreciate you both.
Everybody, thank you so much for watching us today, for hanging out with us. We have another amazing guest coming up next week. Chris already mentioned his name. It's Mike Brewer. And we hope to see you back here soon. We also have to, also want to acknowledge our friends from Apartment Snapshot for making this podcast available by partnering with us on this podcast. I hope you all have a great afternoon, and I hope to see you back here next week. Have an amazing afternoon.
Thanks, guys.